Well, welcome to the 700 Club. International pressure against Israel is escalating. Yesterday, the UN Security Council passed a resolution calling for a pause in the fighting against Hamas.
While some countries in the region are critical of the war on Hamas, others believe the future of the Middle East should include relations with Israel. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell reports.
The IDF military campaign is getting mixed reviews from Israel's neighbors in the region. In Turkey, President Recep Erdogan keeps increasing his condemnation.
Israel is implementing a strategy of total destruction of a city and its people. It is literally carrying out state terrorism with a brutality that deliberately bombs civilians on the road after forcing them to leave their homes. And my heart is at ease. I say openly that Israel is a terrorist state.
Erdogan describes Hamas as resistance fighters and wants to see Israel's political and military leaders tried for war crimes. On the other end of the spectrum, the UAE, a charter member of the Abraham Accords, stated clear support for the Jewish state. Ali al-Nuaimi, the head of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee in the UAE Parliament, said, "From the United Arab Emirates' perspective, the Abraham Accords are there to stay. We want everyone to acknowledge and accept that Israel is there to exist." Going further, Nuaimi said Israel is part of our history and should be part of our future. Many observers believe the move toward adding Saudi Arabia to the Abraham Accords could have been one motivation behind the October 7th terror attack. While the recent Arab summit in Riyadh condemned Israel's military operation, it stopped short of any economic or political punishment through the efforts of Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Given the need to rebuild Gaza when fighting stops, the two nations could be key post-war partners. Meanwhile, Israel is pressed from all sides to cease the fighting in Gaza. Hamas is reportedly offering a deal to free at least 50 women and children in exchange for a multi-day pause in fighting, an increase in humanitarian aid, and releasing a number of Palestinian prisoners. The UN Security Council passed a resolution calling for urgent and extended humanitarian pauses in corridors throughout the Gaza Strip to allow for aid delivery and medical evacuations. The U.S. abstained, allowing the resolution to pass, while Israel's ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, condemned the resolution since it didn't mention the atrocities by Hamas on October 7th. Meanwhile, in the U.S., protesters calling for a ceasefire between Hamas and Israel fought with police outside the Democrat National Committee in Washington. Some Democrat lawmakers had to be escorted to the basement and exit in police vehicles for their safety. With so much attention on Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon, international talk is growing on what's happening behind the scenes.
The main master plan, the main person who's pulling all the strings is Iran. They are the threat to Israel for the next 3 years, 5 years, 25 years.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, Dr. Ophir Falk is a foreign policy advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He joins us now from Tel Aviv. And thanks so much for being with us. It's an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about Erdogan. Is this just posturing on his part, or is he really intending for Turkey to take an active role?
Well, I'm not sure what he's intending to do. What I can tell you is that Israel is setting the gold standard, actually, in military operations. We're in complete compliance with international law. Our response to the atrocities of October 7th, when Hamas attacked our people, murdered over 1,000 people, men, women, and children, beheaded children, burnt babies alive. Our proportional response to that is to destroy Hamas, to make sure that nothing even close to that ever happens again. Anything less than destroying Hamas would be not proportional. In the course of destroying Hamas, the IDF, again, is setting a gold standard in distinguishing between civilians and terrorists. The IDF targets terrorists, while the Hamas targets civilians, not only Israeli civilians, but they hide behind their own civilians. They hide behind and below their civilians. They burnt our babies, and they're hiding behind their babies. Yeah. So again, Israel is in complete compliance with international law.
And I'll add to it, they're holding your babies hostage. And the world should always recognize They're hostages here, and they have not been released. Let's talk about the UN resolution. As an American citizen, I'm absolutely disappointed with our government for abstaining. It had the full power to block this. I'm now hearing calls from the Muslim world on Al Jazeera that because of the UN resolution calling for a ceasefire, that Israel is now, quote, violating international law. What's your response to the resolution and to this call from Al Jazeera?
Well, a call for a ceasefire is like calling for a ceasefire after 9/11. Actually, what happened to us on October 7th was like 20 times 9/11 in terms of the scale, in terms of the proportion. And it'd be like asking the U.S. for a ceasefire after 9/11. It'd be asking for a ceasefire against ISIS when taking out ISIS. It would be like asking for a ceasefire after Pearl Harbor. It's simply not going to happen. We are going to destroy Hamas. By the way, not only for Israel, we're on the front line of this thing right now. But as the Prime Minister said, this is a battle for civilization. It's the civilized world against Hamas barbarian savages. And you got to make a choice. It's a point of moral clarity, whether you're with the good or with the evil. And we actually appreciate President Biden and the American people's support throughout this whole thing, both moral and material support from the American people. It's been bipartisan support throughout. And we appreciate that. Our allies' support from the U.S., the U.K., and around the world, actually.
Well, let's turn to the positive side. I'm really encouraged by what UAE has said, that Israel is part of our history and should be part of our future, that Israel has a right to exist, and they're standing strong with the Abraham Accords. So how can we continue that? What do you see for Israeli-Arab relations in the future?
Well, absolutely. That's very encouraging. It's an encouraging statement, and that encourages us. We want to increase the circle of peace in the region. I think it's clear that the Hamas had three goals on October 7th. One was to murder Jews. That's nothing new. That's in their charter. It was to kidnap Jews, and it was to derail the prospects for peace in the region. They're going to fail on that. Once we destroy Hamas, we will enlarge the circle of peace, and I'm actually optimistic that is possible. And the day after Hamas, there will be a bright future for this region.
Well, let's talk about the day after Hamas and the future for Gaza. Do you have any insight? Can you tell us what are the current plans for Gaza after the war?
Well, sure, Gordon. The day after Hamas, there's a number of plans being discussed right now with our international partners and internally as well. But there are three prerequisites or a premise for all of these plans. The common denominator of all of these plans are actually it's a 3D dimension: destroy Hamas so they will never be able to attack us again. To demilitarize Gaza so that there will be absolutely no threat on our southern border, and to de-radicalize Gaza so that their children will not be taught to murder Jews and to cherish death. We love life, and they're cherishing death. I mean, we should change that. We must de-radicalize Gaza, and once that is achieved, we can rebuild Gaza. Gaza will be rebuilt with the hope of peace, and I'm optimistic that that's actually possible.
Does UNRWA, is UNRWA any part of the future in Gaza? I'm of the opinion UNRWA should have been dissolved decades ago, but it's still there, and it seems to be fueling the ideology of hate. What's the future of UNRWA in Gaza?
Well, their role up to now has been disappointing. I agree with you, sir. I agree with you, Gordon. But we welcome anyone who's willing and able to provide humanitarian aid to the civilians of Gaza, food, water, and medical attention. We've allocated a safe zone in the southwest of Gaza for all civilians to get out of harm's way and to go down to the southwest to a safe zone. Unfortunately, the UN has been able to, I think, erect something like 15 tents over the past 40 days in that zone. I think, I hope those humanitarian efforts or humanitarian aid efforts will expedite, and that we will be able to take out Hamas without endangering civilians.
Let's take a longer view of the relationship with Iran. Here we have by all accounts, a radical regime. They execute their own citizens. They beat to death their own women for not wearing scarves properly. And they vowed to wipe Israel off the map. And they currently are the puppet master behind Hezbollah and Hamas. So in terms of long-term strategy, what's Israel's relationship with Iran?
Well, I agree with you completely. Iran, or the tyrants from Tehran, they're orchestrating this thing in terms of having proxies in Lebanon with Hezbollah and proxies of Hamas in Gaza. 93% of the military budget of Hamas is provided by Iran. And right now we're fully focused on destroying Hamas, and that's what we're doing. The strategic threat to the region on October 6th was Iran, and it's the strategic threat today as well.
Well, this week, more than 290,000 Jews and Christians gathered in Washington, D.C. How important is Christian support? How important it is to show there's wide support for Israel in its fight right now?
Well, it's very important, and it's heartwarming. It strengthens our soul. The support we're getting from the Christian community in the United States and around the world, it gives us strength. It is very important, and we highly appreciate that.
All right. Well, we're standing with you. Dr. Falk, thanks for joining with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you.
Well, out of school, out of work, out of home, the everyday lives of many Israelis have been completely destroyed. It's been especially difficult for the children. And here is how you are helping families through these devastating times.
Yehonatan and his family are one of many who have relocated to safety away from the fighting along the Gaza border. While safe, their lives have been uprooted.
I didn't think this situation would happen and we would be evacuated to a hotel. It's not easy for us to be cooped up like this.
His son is out of school and missing his friends.
My son told me with a really sad look in his eyes how hard it is for him here and that he's tired. He just wants to go home.
When they evacuated, they hardly took anything with them, not even many clothes. And now they're also out of work.
For now, we have to try and keep expenses to a minimum. It's not easy because we pay rent for a house we no longer live in, but at least here we don't have to pay anything, and we are taken care of. The fact that we are safe is most important.
Thanks to support from donors like you, Yehonatan's family and many others are getting the help they need. Since they left home without much of anything, we gave clothes and shoes to these families.
For children, it is very, very important to know that someone from afar is thinking about them, that there is someone who thinks about their safety. And every one of the donations that you have given really makes the children happy in this difficult situation. Your giving is really, really extraordinary. It is hard to comprehend how much you've donated, and it has touched our hearts.
You can touch hearts in Israel right now. You can let them know very tangibly that you're standing with them, that you want to be there for them, for their children, for their shelter, for their food, and most importantly, for their strength of spirit, that you're standing with them. How can you do that? You can give to CBN Israel. It's real simple. Call us, 1-800-700-7000. Say you can count on me. I want to help the relief effort there. There are hundreds of thousands of Israelis that have been displaced by this war. And they're looking, how do we rebuild our lives? What do we do? And we want to let them know we're standing with you. We're going to see it through all the way to you having a hope, having a future. So if you want to be a part of it, call us, 1-800-700-7000. Just say, I want to give to CBN Israel. You can write to us, CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. You can go to cbn.com. There's a place you can designate your gift. You can also text CBN Israel to 71777. Do it right now, 1-800-700-7000.